Hi, everybody. It's Brian Shannon from AlphaTrends.net. Today is Friday, the 13th of January, 2023, and we had another positive week for the market. In fact, a really good week for the Russell 2000, up more than 5%, semiconductors up 6%, oil up 7%. So, we're adding to these month-to-date, year-to-date numbers, and they're pretty damn impressive, especially considering where we were last year. And Bitcoin has sprung to life, up 17% year-to-date so far. We'll take a look at that chart as well. So let's get to it. The S&P 500 on the left is a daily time frame. I've got a red 20, blue 50, and black 200-day moving average. You can see on the daily time frame, we got up through that 200-day moving average, and previously it had been resistance right at the point, but it's a level of interest. It doesn't mean it's going to act as resistance, and it's something that a lot of people have been talking about here the last week, that be aware of the 200-day moving average, and I think that certainly makes sense. But so far, there's zero evidence that we're finding resistance there. If this market can continue to move higher here in the next, let's say it pulls back a little bit, the next level of interest on the upside would be the anchored volume weighted average price from the beginning of last year. So looking over to the right side of the screen, we see the 15-minute time frame, and all these volume weighted average price levels are identified. I think we can probably clear that red one off and get rid of that because it's really not as relevant anymore. Perhaps we'll put it back at some point. But this is the anchored volume weighted average price for the week, right along there with the 5-day moving average. And this is where we were 1 week ago when this rally began. As you can see, we're still above all those rising volume weighted average price levels as well as the rising 5-day moving average. So on an intermediate term perspective, we're innocent until proven guilty. This was the CPI report right here. We had all that volatility. It gapped down hard, but then rallied and recovered yesterday and closed with a gain. Today, we saw the bank stocks early in the morning that they had reported, and they had gapped lower, but they had recovered, and now that led to confidence for the broader market as well. So when we look at the financial stocks, you can see we saw a big gap lower here. This is why I say you never want to short trade against the direction of the 5-day moving average. The 5-day moving average was rising. People who sold their stocks first thing in the morning, they basically threw them away. And on the daily time frame, we're starting to see more constructive action. We do still have a declining 200-day moving average for the financials, but we're above a rising 20 and 50-day moving average. We're getting a little bit extended here. I think that if we were to continue some strength early into the next week and it breaks out, I think that would be a good place to trim some and then look for a pullback and then maybe repurchase the financials if you're trading them as it rallies up once again. Here's the weekly time frame, and it's starting to look a lot more like these financials are maybe making a bottom. Maybe this is an inverted head and shoulders pattern. Let's go back to the broader market and look at that SPY on the weekly time frame. Here again is the anchored volume weighted average price from the all-time high, and that becomes our next level of interest. I still don't believe that we are miraculously in a new bull market. Maybe we are, but we'll only know in hindsight. I think it's more likely we see something along the lines of this. That would be the best case scenario for a recovery. And I want to see a bull market. It's easier to make money in a bull market for me as well, but I'm reluctant to call it one until we see actual evidence. So back to the NASDAQ, we're right up against this prior band of support in here, and we've got that anchored volume weighted average price off the August high. So this clearly next week becomes a level of interest. We've had a nice rally from 260 to 280, and we see that earnings reports for a lot of big companies are going to start to be released next week. So you've got that added danger to be aware of. Just always know, especially if you're a shorter term trader, when the earnings dates are due. You don't want to get caught, holding something you thought was going to be just a 1 or 2 day trade. They report earnings and then you get crushed by it. That's a terrible, risk management strategy. Anyways, higher highs and higher lows above a rising 5-day moving average. Don't fight this and think, hey, we are at resistance. This is a potential level of resistance, this prior support, but there's absolutely zero evidence the sellers are gaining control because we closed right at the high there. The Russell 2000 is right up against this level. This is as I spoke to subscribers this week, I said it looks like they rallied right through that 200-day moving average. It looks like the next level of interest where it's likely to encounter some supply is the anchored volume weighted average price from the high of from last year and the anchored volume weighted average price from COVID that both come together right here at about 178, 87 and a half to 188. We've had a fantastic run here. Anyone who has been trying to pick the top and say they know where resistance is, they have failed to win because, again, it's higher highs and higher lows above a rising 5-day moving average. There's no such thing as up too much in the short term if there's still buyers. I think it's likely we'll see a pullback that might refresh this market, and then perhaps it finds support at the 5-day moving average. But right now, the theme is I think a lot of things are getting a little bit extended. If you're following on YouTube, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and all that thing. I appreciate it. I look at all the comments and usually, uh, comment back on them. So the semiconductors are also right up against the anchored volume weighted average price from COVID. It hasn't been such an important level, same as the 200-day moving average. We keep those on as a reference point because they often are important, but it doesn't mean they're always going to be the magic level where a market finds resistance or support. We can see again, we saw the CPI number right in here, some volatility, but buyers took control. The market gapped lower this morning and buyers took back control. We're right up against the anchored volume weighted average price from COVID. It's a potential level of resistance in this general area, but maybe it does this and continues higher. Nobody has a crystal ball, but what you do want to know is if you're long, you raise your stops up. The XBI was a good trade for us at Alpha Trends this week. I talk about the IBB as the biotech index a lot, but this one seemed to have been setting up much better. It broke out of this little consolidation. You can call it an ascending triangle or whatever you like here, but it was a purchase right over here and had a beautiful breakout. This is where our stops have been. I still have a 1/3 position because I always take profits on strength, and always will be looking for, if it does something like this as a swing trader, well, I'll be looking to get back involved. I will put an anchored volume weighted average price off of this peak because it's clearly important. So people say, when do I set an anchored volume weighted average price? When do I recognize that it was an important high? Well, once it pulls back like that, I think it's likely it'll happen, something along the lines of this. Now, what if instead we do this on Monday? Well, and then, that anchored volume weighted average price won't be important and we can just delete it off of there. But for now, I want to measure it against this high simply because we ran up from 81 to 89 and a half, and then we sold off quickly 3 points in there. So to me, it marks an important level where the psychology shifted to profit taking, at least in the short term. And as a swing trader, those are the trends I'm interested in. LSCC has been a great trade as well. We've got 1/3 of this one still left. If it breaks out beyond here, I'm going to get out of the balance of that one. Sold part of the ALGM, and CERE was a biotech stock that broke out today. So guess what happened? We sold the stock. We had entered it right over in here. It breaks out, time to sell at least half of the balance, which leaves us with 1/3 left. But then that was stopped out here. It's a risky biotech stock, so I'm not interested in holding that. My time frame is swing trades. I'm long some Home Depot. I'm looking at Amgen possibly as a trade next week. mRNA is setting up and had a good day today. Stocks like BBWI. Here's this daily chart and the intraday time frame over here. Not involved in it yet. I spoke about Monster this week, and at Alpha Trends we were looking to buy above this peak right here, and then it failed. So we haven't been involved in that one. It looks like maybe next week Monster can do something along the lines of this and then get going. If you look at the weekly time frame, it's up at these all-time highs, so it has the potential clearly to be able to continue to move higher out of this range. BBWI is one that we just mentioned. So BRBR. It's a choppy stock. I haven't been involved in it yet. I've got an eye on it. Here's what the weekly time frame looks like. If you anchor a volume weighted average price from the 2021 high, we're above that. We're above the anchored volume weighted average price from the IPO and the COVID low and this low back here. So I'm reluctant to get involved simply because of the choppiness. It's about the personality of the stock. I don't have the patience to let them pull back a little bit, but it's still looking like it has the potential potential to go. Earnings aren't due till February 2nd, so always be aware of when the earnings are due. BRKR is another one I've got an eye on for next week, and I'll explain that in detail as I always do for subscribers to Alpha Trends. Meanwhile, enjoy your 3-day weekend, and hope your year's going well so far.